Okay, so Happy New Year, everybody. Rytis Vyšniauskas, Donatas Urbonas, as always, in the URBONUS podcast. We are here to talk about the highest level European basketball, EuroLeague particularly. Say hi to our listeners, Rytis.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I didn't have time yet to get a haircut, so you're going to have to suffer this messy hair.
Your haircut should be on your New Year's resolution list.
It is.
Actually, it is.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm only scheduled for tomorrow, so I didn't make it in time.
Didn't you say last week that you were scheduled last week?
For next week, right? So next week is this week, but unfortunately, I'm scheduled for a Wednesday. Well, it is what it is. I really don't pay too much attention to that, but I'm very grateful to everybody who comments about my hair.
Especially
and
that
reminds
one
me that barbershop actually exists and you should go there.
So you make New Year's resolutions, right?
Sort of. Nothing serious, really, to be honest.
Give us at least one interesting point on your list.
I'm not really a big fan of New Year, New Me, but I'm going to try at least for a while to start waking up in the mornings a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Have a proper day because I'm a sleeper. I usually wake up really late, after 12 a.m. So
that's why we usually start our podcast 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
But this time it's 11:30. So
yeah. So I'm trying.
What's early for you?
Early for me, I would say 10.
Okay. Okay.
Come on, man.
That's an improvement. Okay.
I'm working late in the evening.
Yeah, I understand you.
I'm also watching NBA games, so
that's
me,
okay.
10 a.m. is really early.
Okay.
I don't have to go to office, so it's kind of different for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also had my New Year's resolution. I actually started making it from the last year because we had a lockdown. There was not much to do on the New Year's Eve. So with my wife, we decided to, let's say, play New Year's resolution. And we kind of found it interesting. And for this year, one of my points I put on the paper was just to call my friends, let's say beloved ones, at least once a week because of all these, of all my working routine, of all the basketball stuff. Sometimes I just got lost in time, and probably it's healthy, to keep a relationship and at least once a week to have a quality phone conversation with friends. So let's try.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Yeah.
I'm gonna last for I would say a couple of weeks at most.
I can see Jan Vesely also having his New Year's resolution and putting "let's get not injured" on his paper. Let's say he's out, as well as Nando De Colo. That's a huge blow for Fenerbahce, actually. Vesely is out for probably 4 more weeks. De Colo from 7 to 9 weeks, which is a lot. In De Colo's case, it might be more than a half of the rest regular season. And the main question we have, one of the main questions we have for this podcast is, are we talking that Fenerbahce's playoff chances, playoff hopes are dead?
Don't you think that Fenerbahce was actually the club that wanted the season to be suspended for a couple of weeks?
I had the same idea.
It would make sense, right?
For 1 month, it would be clever decision for them.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the calendar, you're thinking about how many games they're going to miss, how many games they're going to play without De Colo and Vesely. However, in this COVID situation, you never know how many of these games will be postponed. And as funny as it sounds, in Fenerbahce's case, postponements are good.
Mm-hmm.
You can win some time to get your best players back on the court. But honestly, if the situation is the way it is right now, I really don't see them making the playoffs. And that's the consequence not only of the injuries they have right now. Of course, you're losing 2 of your best players, but also the standings. If they would be somewhere, let's say 5th or 4th in the standings right now, I could be thinking they will hang on to this they will suffer a little bit, but eventually De Colo and Vesely will get back. They will sign maybe some new players, and they will live through this difficult time and will make the playoffs. But right now, they're not in the playoff standings. They're 10th. So they still have some catching up to do. And I just don't really see them doing it without De Colo and Vesely. Actually, in that last game where they got hurt, they lost to Asvel, and you can see that they have a really thin roster. And
Depth was already a problem in Fenerbahce.
Even before Vesely's and De Colo's injuries, they had problems with Devin Booker, with Danilo Bartel. Some other players were missing games. Mariel Shejak is really not fitting in. And already Sasha Djordjevic had some problems in this roster. But of course, you were dependent on your best players. These are star players. They would be stars on any other team. So now we're thinking they're gonna play at least a month without De Colo and Vesely, and in a month's time you can lose 4 or 5 games. So I'm sorry, I really respect Fenerbahce a lot, and I really respect Sasha Djordjevic, but it's just bad luck. And in these circumstances, I don't see them making the playoffs.
De Colo and Vesely, they combined for 25.5 points per game, which is 1/3 of total points, 6.6 assists, 1/3, 2.6 steals, 1/4 of the team's total, 8.1 rebounds, 1/4 of the team's total, and they were only players scoring in double digits per game. So this is a huge blow for Fenerbahce, huge lineup changer. For example, what is interesting that Vesely had the biggest plus minus, and 15 most used lineups included Vesely and De Colo, or at least one of them. So it's gonna be interesting to watch how they're gonna change. And my only hope, I think that all odds are against Fenerbahce. It's not only because they're below the top 8. They have 7 wins and 10 losses. It's not only the problem of the standings, because it's hard to see many teams dropping out of top 8. Maybe Unix will disappoint in the second part of the season. Olympiacos, they tend to lose more games in the second part of the season usually. Maybe something will go wrong with Zenit. It's really hard to expect many teams dropping out, but it takes that Fenerbahce has to improve their game a lot. And it's hard to do it without their main players. But my only hope is that we had Baskonia's example last year. They didn't have injury problems like Fenerbahce are facing right now. But I have to admit that I checked Baskonia's roster from the last year. I tried to compare it with Fenerbahce's current roster without Vesely and De Colo. And I cannot say that Baskonia was a way better team than Fenerbahce will be at the moment. They had, for example, Perija Henry, Rokas Giedraitis, Sedekerskis, Polonara, and Fall on their starting lineup. So it's like, Henry, Goodrich, Polonara, Floyd, new shooting guard, for example. They're not that worse than Baskonia was, but Baskonia last season they were over 50% of winning. They had over 50% of winning percentage, and they made a late playoff push. So I can see it as an example for Fener, but there are a lot of ifs. If Perija Henry will step up as the main guy of Fenerbahce, I believe he can do it. He was playing a little bit better than before. And of course Marko Guduric, he also has to step up, and I believe that these guys will step up, because it will be more guard-oriented team when it was with Jan Vesely probably, and a lot of depends how successful they will be with their new signing. As far as I heard, they were after Isaiah Taylor, who is one of the top scorers in the ACB league. He was tremendous for Murcia, but from what I understood, he rejected the offer. He has the EuroLeague buyout. I've heard that also Aleric Freeman was on their list. He spent quite some time in Asvel last year. But I'm hearing that a lot of teams after him, so it's not clear if he will end up in Fenerbahce, probably not. So it's obvious that they're looking for a scorer, but a lot of depends on how he will fit the team during the season, if he will be quality enough, because the market is not good for trying to find a replacement for such a player like Nando De Colo.
These players are irreplaceable. I mean, sometimes you can improve your team by signing a role player in the middle of the season. You can replace an injured backup center or something like that, but these are irreplaceable basketball players. When you lose both De Colo and Vesely, it's almost to a degree where Barcelona would be on a market to replace Mirotic in the middle of the season, which is impossible. Obviously, you cannot get the same quality, but of course they need to add more bodies. Either way, they signed Jahai Floyd before Vesely's injury, and they signed him mainly because of Devin Booker's health problems and Ahmedou Viroglu being out, so they needed another big.
Yeah.
Now they need another shooting guard, as you said. So shooting has been a problem for Fenerbahce all season, so another shooter would definitely be more than welcomed. In my eyes, the biggest problem with Fenerbahce this season, why they are where they are right now, is that they didn't close games. They had big issues closing games, and now you lost your best closer, Nando De Colo. So now you're going to be closing games with the ball being in Pierre Henry's hands or Marko Guduric, as you said. It's hard to predict what Pierre Henry will deliver right now. Obviously, when he was playing with De Colo, there was not much pressure on him to lead the team. You are the point guard, but you're not necessarily the primary ball handler, so you need to be focused on defense. You need to put a lot of energy and effort there, and
maybe that's what he needs. If you remember in Baskonia, I don't remember any other ball handler.
Yeah.
Who would get all
he was a dominant player.
Yeah,
so he needs to be like this right now in Fenerbahce. But once again, then you're thinking, what's Sasha Djordjevic's idea with Pierre Henry? How does he see him? Does he see him as this floor general? If Djordjevic does not trust Pierre Henry to be the leader, then you might have some problems. So far this season, he's been shooting the ball really well from 3-point distance, which is good, of course.
He improved his numbers.
It's a positive, right? So if he can stay consistent with shooting, because he's going to have to take a lot more shots right now, a lot more responsibilities, maybe they can survive. Let's look at the calendar, actually, what teams they're facing right now, and let's calculate a little bit.
Yeah, for example, Vesely out for 5 weeks means that he will probably miss 8 games, and if they call out for more time, it means that it will be something between 11 and 13 games.
And obviously, you still need some time to get back in shape when you come back after an injury, and it's a pretty serious injury. Vesely, he dealt with similar issues actually
every season.
Almost every season.
To be fair.
Last year, he got hurt during the playoffs or before the playoffs, which was also a problem. But he made the playoffs, barely, but he made it.
Once he didn't make the Final Four, if I remember well. He always had some injuries, and I think that it will be taken in a consideration before his contract extension. I mean, it can be a deal breaker actually for Fenerbahce.
He's such a good player. I would love to have him on my team.
But he's always
despite all the
out.
risks, I would love to have him on my team. Right. So the calendar.
They play Zvezda.
Maybe it's not as bad as it looks like. Yeah, Zvezda away. Then they have Olympiacos. Then they have 2 games where they must win without De Colo, without Vesely. It doesn't matter. They must win at home against Alba Berlin and against Žalgiris. They already have the game against Real Madrid postponed, which is planned to be played on February. So Vesely might be back.
By the way, even Olympiacos game, it will be post-COVID Olympiacos.
Right.
So that might turn in Fenerbahce's favor.
So there might be some chances. I see they will be playing Maccabi as well away from home, and they will be playing Asvel at home and Armani away. You can imagine that these games will be still without Nando and Jan. If they can get at least 3 victories from these, maybe they'll have a chance to make a big run, big push.
But actually, however, to make the playoffs, they have to get at least 4 or 5 victories.
Probably, because, later on, even with De Colo and Vesely back, they will be facing Barcelona, they will be facing CSKA, they will be facing Anadolu Efes. They are actually facing these elite teams in the last part of the regular season. In spring, in March. It's hard. Actually, if you ask me, I would say they're not making the playoffs this year. I was really a big believer in them, even though they were losing games during this first part of the season.
Because usually Fenerbahce improved their game.
Yeah,
in
and
the second
and
part
I
of the
really
season.
trust Alexander Djordjevic. His basketball IQ is phenomenal, and really, I would say he's an underrated coach because he didn't coach in EuroLeague a lot. He was coaching the Serbia national team for a long time.
I was actually surprised how much hate he gets from fans all around the Europe. It's hard for me to explain it because I didn't have a lot of work to do.
Of course, he has this reputation of being a little bit conflicting person. If you remember what happened in Bayern, in Bologna, but when you listen to him talk basketball, you can hear that
He has a big mouth. Yeah,
he is. I mean, he considers himself highly. First of all, his basketball knowledge is really remarkable. And maybe there's some arrogance. Maybe that's not good for some players, and maybe fans don't really like
Show
that.
me a great player who doesn't have any ego or arrogance.
Yeah, of course. But you were talking to Sasha, and you heard what he said about Nando De Colo, because Nando was struggling a little bit after the Olympics in the beginning of the season, and Sasha just said that Nando is a phenomenal player. I trust him so much, and he's gonna decide games for us. So that's true. But could he say the same about Pierre-Henry? Because now Pierre-Henry has to be the guy.
Okay, so we can see that Fenerbahce would love to have season paused at least for a month. But if you were a EuroLeague CEO of the EuroLeague, what would you do? You would try to shorten the period of isolation. You would try to pause the season for a few weeks, as it was suggested by one team during the team's meeting, or you would try to do some other things.
I don't think that suspending the season for 2 weeks or even a month solves the problems. We're living with COVID, right? We're learning how to live with it. I'm thinking that we kind of got used to living with it, but the sports world is really unpredictable, and these postponements are happening more than last season, actually. Last season, first of all, this shows how EuroLeague is not prepared for these scenarios. Like last season, when some teams were hit by COVID, they started giving these technical losses.
It's actually an incredible improvement compared to the previous season.
So Zenit could not play games because they had players out. Damn. They lost 0-20.
Yeah.
Then,
and suddenly they flip it.
Then there was a scandal.
Postponements.
There was a big scandal. People saying, hold on. How is this our fault? I mean, you can get a technical loss when you don't show up in games or something happens that you were supposed to handle. This is COVID, right? No one's protected from it. So then EuroLeague said, yeah, right, we're going to just postpone these games. So last season it was horrible how they handled it. This year, first of all, I was waiting for their reaction. I was waiting what they're going to do. When it all started, first of all, you thought like it's just one game, it's just 2 games, but now you're seeing that it's 3 or 4, 5, 6. So suspending the season, in my opinion, is not an option, because who can tell you that when you get back on court again playing, same thing will not happen.
Exactly.
So shortening the period of isolation might be a good idea, because if some players are asymptomatic, and as long as they get some negative tests, they should be able to get back on court quicker, just like it's happening in the NBA right now. However, the issue here is that EuroLeague is consisting of clubs from how many different countries?
Probably around 10.
Right. So in almost every country, the situation is really different, and the government is acting differently. For example, in Lithuania, Žalgiris is actually playing in almost sold-out arena, and they're carry on playing their games in the national championship. Everything seems to be going in a normal flow.
We had concerts during the Christmas break.
Yeah,
the arenas full like with 15,000 people.
But then you have some countries that are actually close to another huge lockdown, and you never know what's going to happen. EuroLeague's rules cannot really contradict to the rules of the government, local government, right? Last year we were in a situation almost where Maccabi couldn't travel abroad, right? There was an exception made eventually, and they managed to play games, but there were really some red flags that guests from other countries cannot go in and play with Maccabi in Tel Aviv. So there were a lot of questions raised, and something like this could happen this season, in the middle of the season. And it's really difficult to find the correct answer, but in my opinion, suspending the season is not going to work. So shortening the period of isolation is a step.
It sounds great. It sounds logical. That was the main proposal in EuroLeague board meeting yesterday.
But is it doable for everybody? Because in some countries you have the isolation for like 14 days, in some countries for 10.
Russia and Lithuania have the isolation restrictions for 10 days. Turkey, 10 days. And unfortunately, I cannot say that I can trust EuroLeague to get exceptions in all these countries so quickly. Because if it was only up to the EuroLeague, okay, we just shortened the quarantine from 14 to 10 or 7 days, 7 in the best scenario, and we are playing, and we are not afraid of all these postponements or COVID cases, because now many teams suffering, huge outbreaks of COVID, so we can expect way less cases in the second part of the season. But I tried to talk with some, let's say, general managers of a few different countries, and they were like, how are you going to convince Russian government to accept these rules if they are on a way stricter quarantine rules? Even now, in the beginning of the season, they were facing some struggles. For example, in Germany, they accepted only vaccines which were accepted by the European Union, and a lot of Russian team players were vaccinated with Sputnik, so they had to make another exceptions because some hotels couldn't accommodate some of the players. There are a lot of things, and if it's really hard because I was told, like, if there's a player who got COVID 7 days ago, how it's possible for him to board the plane in Turkey, for example, and to land in Russia? You can imagine how many challenges they might face. And these decisions might take weeks. And it means that the regular season is going to be over. So if you remember the EuroLeague's reaction, the good thing is that they had a board meeting. They are discussing some potential ways out of the situation. But I'm just skeptical how they're gonna convince all these governments, unless clubs will be involved. CSKA, I believe they have a huge reputation. Because another good thought I've heard was that who is basketball in Europe? In United States, NBA made some steps, being almost even ahead of the country. But NBA is a big thing in the United States. Basketball in Europe, EuroLeague in Europe. Unfortunately, it's not so important.
Football in Europe during the pandemic, the Champions League had to make a...
How they're dealing with COVID?
Well, right now they're not playing. Champions League is...
But let's say local championships.
Local championships. Well, in England there are a lot of postponed games. In Spain they had a short break. They're just getting back right now. The same in Italy, the same in France and Germany. They have a short break during this festive period between Christmas and New Year's. They're playing. They have bigger squads. Even if some players test positive, you play with what you have, and you add some youngsters from the under 23s or under 19s, and it is what it is. So really, it's hard to compare football to basketball, because in basketball you have some clubs that they have 12 players on the roster and they don't really have any reserves, don't have any youngsters or anything, so it's different. However, my example, what I wanted to say, was from previous year, from the year I would say 2020. You remember when the world of sports stopped everything? Nobody was playing. There were no leagues, no championships, nothing. When football got back, European football, the Champions League, they were playing behind closed doors in a bubble in Portugal. So they played a knockout tournament in a bubble. NBA got back also in a bubble in Orlando. EuroLeague didn't come back that season. They didn't finish the season. Do you think that European basketball bubble is something to put into consideration? I mean, I know there are a lot of regular season games left, so it kind of makes it difficult. It could be doable for the playoffs, but what do you think in general about the idea? If there's no way out, do we form a bubble and these 18 clubs just go and play there?
I'm not a fan of this idea for the regular season because, as I said,
mainly for the playoffs, as I said.
Yeah.
For regular season, I don't think it's really
doesn't
possible.
make sense.
And you also
And
have to play national championships.
And especially we're learning way more about the COVID, and we see the examples in the NBA and them considering playing even through through COVID. If you feel asymptomatic of course you're vaccinated, they might play through COVID. I cannot imagine how it will get going with the United States regulations and stuff, but at least there's an idea of living with COVID and trying to live in a normal conditions. For the playoffs, I would imagine the scenario because we can see teams traveling, and it would be very unfair to watch teams like Fenerbahce suffering, for example, for the playoff stage, losing many players before the most important games of the season. And my for the Final Four, I would hate to see empty stands again for the Final Four.
Where is the Final Four this year?
Germany again, Berlin. And Germans, they are strict with
No.
COVID regulations, actually.
I don't really see.
It's too early to talk about what will happen in May, but we can see that there might be some problems.
Well, there might be. I mean,
but at least we have vaccines.
it might
and a
not
lot
be
of
behind
people
closed
vaccinated.
doors, but I cannot imagine that it will be without any limitations. In May, yeah, there's still a lot of time. So the bubble is out of the question, right? Because of
unless for the playoffs.
Unless for the playoffs.
But I have a feeling that we will be much better in May and April than we were previous year.
Should be.
And this version of COVID, I hope that it's kind of in the final stage of that virus fighting.
Everyone's
our
hoping
lives.
for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, well, we saw and we talked about the Real Madrid game against CSKA, where they had to call up some 17-year-olds and they had to play with them. And Real Madrid is just one of the few clubs that have the ability to do that, have the luxury to do that, because they have a proper academy and really good young players that can play actually at the age of 17. There are many clubs that don't really have any youth system.
That's a big problem, because I believe in Real's way we could avoid postponements, because postponing games looks okay right now, but for example, in Žalgiris case, they will have they were scheduled to had 3 double game weeks for the second part of the season. Now they will have 6, and it will be pretty much the same for most of the teams. And double game weeks are okay when you have it like once a month, but if it will be like a frequent thing in the EuroLeague, it's just too heavy for a basketball fan. It's too heavy for us, for commentators, for journalists.
Man. I'm not so sure, man. I mean, basketball.
I think it's bad for the EuroLeague product, because you also have to you have a Champions League football, a lot of other events. Too many games.
I
in 1 week.
I accept these arguments that even for the television, it's not very good when EuroLeague clashes with the Champions League, for example. You're always trying to avoid that. You're always trying to plan your double game weeks on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when there's no Champions League football. However, I don't think it's such a big deal for teams to play double game weeks more often, because basketball is
would have been in a normal scenario without domestic championships.
Basketball is a sport where you can play back to back. NBA teams travel a lot and they play back-to-back games.
But they have charters. They have great conditions for recovery.
They do. I agree with that. But
probably half of the
but
EuroLeague
we're not
teams,
even talking about
charters.
back-to-back. You're going to have to play, let's say, 2 games in 48 hours. In football, it's impossible. Football is a different sport where you need at least 48 hours to recover after the game. So you cannot actually play in 2 days' time. In basketball, like I said, back-to-backs are manageable, and now we're talking about 2 games in 48 hours. And the traveling in Europe, it's not as difficult as it sounds. I mean, most of these countries are not that far away from each other. I don't think it's such a big deal, really, to be honest. I mean,
I think it's not, but I think that most of the teams, they are not ready for that kind of schedule because most of these teams will have way more double game weeks. They also have domestic championships during the weekend, and they're not adjusted yet to this kind of schedule.
again,
They're not ready.
we can hit the question about the youngsters, about the academies.
Exactly.
Like rich clubs like Armani or CSKA. When was the last time they had someone coming up from the youth system?
Mhm.
Or at least do they even have a youth system in Milan, for example? So you could use these players to have a deeper squad to manage the situation, to play the national league games at least with younger guys, protecting your veterans. But there are just not too many clubs that can afford to do that. Real Madrid and Barcelona are probably the only ones, which is kind of sad. In the NBA, what are they doing? 10-day contracts, right? You can call up a player, like we had the situation when Miami Heat were playing San Antonio Spurs in San Antonio, Texas, and Miami Heat were shorthanded. They needed another guy on the roster so that they could play the game. So they just called up a random guy who was within a driving distance from San Antonio. Some guy, I don't remember his name. He played in Ulm last season in Germany. So he just drove there and played the game. 10-day contracts. It's not possible in Europe, of course. 10-day contracts. Where do these players come from? This is why NBA has the G League. I mean, the American basketball system is completely different, professional basketball.
It's perfect.
However, the G League is actually like the youth academy, but not for one club, but for the whole league. It's a talent pool where you can call up players for 10 days. You can call up players on unguaranteed contracts, on two-way contracts. You can move them, and you can always give a chance to somebody. In Europe, you sign your squad, you plan your season, you play your season. That's it. And it's kind of sad. I mean, we were talking about these things. I understand that for these smaller budget teams, it costs a lot to have a youth system and to grow players because the reward is nothing because you get a buyout from an NBA club. What's that? That money doesn't change anything.
It's the case for the rich clubs as well. I talked with some GMs of the rich clubs and they said that it's not profitable.
Yeah, it's not profitable. I get it, but Real Madrid and Barcelona are setting an example.
Baskonia, actually, we have
and
to
Baskonia.
include Baskonia because even probably facing potential postponements, they have 18 players.
So we're just talking about Spanish clubs.
Yeah, they set an example
because
for the rest of Europe.
As far as I know, the Spanish league rules they have to register some homegrown players, which means, like, for example, Tadas Sedekerskis, he's been with Baskonia since 15 years old, so he's already considered as a homegrown. So he fills the spot because Baskonia do not have many Spanish players, but they have homegrown players that they actually took them as teenagers to their club. So this is an example. I mean, I get it that it's not profitable for you to grow youngsters, but it makes you prepared for scenarios like COVID. It makes you it gives you a lot more options to rotate, to play your roster in different ways because you're playing EuroLeague and Spanish National Championship as well. So the Spanish clubs are dealing with this a lot better than the rest of the Europe.
Yeah, I would love to see something like a youth EuroLeague, but not like we have free in-season tournaments and then the final tournament during the Final Four, but like regular season of youth EuroLeague. The problem is that most of the teams wouldn't have enough money to afford another team traveling all around Europe. But that would be a good pool for all these teams.
As I said, basketball is not so big in Europe, and this is another example.
Yeah, we have to deal with some drawbacks of the current system.
Yeah, if we would have a working system model, how clubs are compensated for the youngsters that came through their ranks and they went somewhere else, they signed big contracts, they went to the NBA, there will be some motivation to actually invest money and try to have young players and to have a actually profitable business model. Because right now, what happens? If you have some elite talents, amazing young players, when they grow up, turn, let's say, 19, 20, you start playing them in your first team when they're 18. If they're actually good in the EuroLeague, obviously they're getting drafted. They're going to go to the NBA. You're going to get how much? 200, 300K, $500,000. But that's just one time. That's one single payment, and that's it. After that, the player is signing huge lucrative deals in the NBA, and there's no reward for you as the club that actually
It would be
helped him.
amazing for a homegrown club to get 5% of the upcoming NBA deals that player will have.
Yeah.
And instead of agent getting a big amount of that percentage, homegrown teams should get some reward. And I remember I was raising the question of increasing the buyout, standard buyout, which European NBA teams have. At the moment, it's something for the next summer. It should be something $775,000. It's getting bigger every year by very small margins. And I was raising the question that it should be way bigger in order for teams to get a, let's say, a solid reward. But then I talked with some NBA people and they told us, I mean, how many European players actually get drafted or get into the NBA at a young age? And they said that we would instead choose NCAA players. We have a lot of NCAA players, and you don't have to pay any buyout. They're playing a lot. They're playing in a system which prepares them better than the European basketball system. So that's a huge conflict between two systems, and of course, unfortunately, it's not in Europeans' favor.
The European basketball market doesn't really have a system. It's just wild west. I mean, the EuroLeague, let's face it, it's a budget league where there you have rich clubs and you have poor clubs and you have middle class clubs, right? And when you see these like Cinderella stories, when Žalgiris makes the Final Four, you're kind of excited because it's an underdog story. But then you're always thinking, right, so Pangos is going to go there after the season. Micic is going to go there. Davis is going to go there. These guys are going to go somewhere else.
Even if they are under contract.
Yeah, and that club, in this example, it's Žalgiris, doesn't get anything from all of this. Only just the satisfaction that they had a wonderful season and an amazing story. There is no way for a European basketball club to grow financially, making profits in a natural way, let's say. Being successful on the court, so making money because you're winning games, and also making money of good transfers when you're selling
Real
players.
Madrid has a good buyout model, but they lose 30 million a year because of our expenses.
Yeah, but Real Madrid is one of the rich clubs.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have a successful buyout model, they are still one of the elite clubs in Europe because it's a huge club. So this kind of makes the European basketball boring in a way. Because it's just always the rich club signing the best players from these poor clubs that actually had a good season. This is why you always have players signing 1+1 or something like that. Who commits to a 5-year deal in Europe? Only Real Madrid and Barcelona.
And as well.
It's an exception of the rule, but
I remember like 15, 20 years ago, it was some teams were signing young players to 7-year deals, 5-year deals. Crazy times.
Yeah, so just as I said,
and they were putting crazy buyout clauses. Actually,
I had this discussion with a couple of my friends, I would say, about the NBA regular season and the EuroLeague regular season, and I always agree with that notion that a single EuroLeague game in a regular season, of course, is more interesting than a single NBA game out of the context, because the EuroLeague game means more, because the EuroLeague regular season is very competitive, it's very challenging, every game feels like the playoffs actually, and it's good. But why is NBA more interesting as a league, not as a single game you watch on television? It's so interesting to see the GMs, how they're planning for 5 years ahead, how they're rebuilding a team, how they're making moves in the market. The small market teams like Milwaukee or Toronto, with great basketball minds like Masai Ujiri making genius moves and building a championship team. This is what makes NBA exciting. You can skip these 82 regular season games, but concentrate on how professionals are building a basketball team, a dynasty, and trying to win championships by these great moves, trades, signings, and drafts. And in Europe, it's nothing. In the summer, a rich club will sign players, will have a roster, and you will have at least 3 out of 4 clubs in the Final Four. Almost the same every single year, year after year. And it's a budget league.
Yeah, and in NBA, if you're bad right now, with a good strategy, you turn things around very quickly in 3-5 years. With a good strategy, with good people in the front office. In Europe, for example, we have Panathinaikos, 17th seed. They will be good only if, I don't know, Dimitris Ginokopoulos will return with a big bag of money, and they will be rich again, and they will be in the playoffs, and everybody will be happy. But it's based only on, all these rich guys.
Somebody has to open a wallet for you to be a winning team in Europe. And in the NBA, you have small market teams, big market teams. You always know that the superstar free agents, they're going to go for LA, they're going to go for NY, they're going to go somewhere big, right? But there is a chance, there is a system that allows you to have a winning team in Memphis, in Minnesota, in Milwaukee, in Toronto, everywhere. It's possible. It's hard work. It's easier if you're in LA, but it's possible, as we're seeing right now. The current champions, Milwaukee Bucks from Wisconsin. Who wants to go to Wisconsin?
Or Memphis?
But they have their franchise player in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they're NBA champions.
Yeah, so we will never have that in Europe, unfortunately. That's my prediction for at least 10 upcoming years.
Vasa Micic, maybe better example would be Kevin Pangos. Vasa Micic in Žalgiris actually was not a superstar. Kevin Pangos, let's say he had these great seasons in Žalgiris, and then he's announcing like, I'm extending 5-year contract with Žalgiris. I love it here. It's impossible. He went to Barcelona. Luke Sigma maybe is the only strange example of, in my opinion, an elite power forward sticking with Alba Berlin.
There's something special in Berlin, I think, which keeps Sigma out there.
But then again, you have guys like Giedraitis, Grigonis, who are also flourishing in Berlin, but they moved on. They signed better deals.
Okay, let's go with our predictions for 2022. In this case, we will share 5 or 6 of our predictions, and particularly with the EuroLeague basketball, because we could predict a lot of different things, but we try to be focused on the EuroLeague. So, give me your first prediction for 2022.
Right, my first one is kind of safe, because I believe you will agree with me. I'm going to say that the EuroLeague champions, the current EuroLeague champions, Anadolu Efes, will not be in the Final Four to defend their crown.
Okay.
They will make the playoffs, even though right now, even making the playoffs doesn't sound so convincing. They had their last game in Kazan where they actually lost Vasa Micic. They were playing without Vasa and without Krunoslav Simon, and you could see that when there's only Shane Larkin, there's not that much power for them to win games against teams like Kazan. So I just see some players getting old. A rebuild is really needed.
Ataman is getting crazy.
And you can actually see how difficult it is for a newcomer to get into this squad and to show himself. Like Elijah Bryan, when he first signed with Anadolu Efes, you thought it's a good signing. He's a really good player, actually. I could see him being one of the leaders on many EuroLeague teams. In Anadolu Efes, when everybody's playing, Vasa, Kruno, Larkin, Elijah Bryan he looks like a misfit, actually, even though he's a great basketball player. So in my eyes, after this season, they have to do the rebuild with Ataman or without Ataman, I don't know, but they have to rebuild the squad. They have to sign new players in center position. Some guys are just getting old, and they are veterans, and they're not as good as they have been in the previous years. And I was always thinking when they started the season slow that soon they're gonna start winning games. Soon they're gonna get better. Now, let's say they have 9 wins, 9 losses, but in some games they just won because of individual quality, like against Cervena Zvezda. Zvezda was the better team.
Mm-hmm.
They should have won the game. Kalinic didn't make his free throws in the end. Micic did. Anadolu Efes got the victory. But it's already New Year. It's already January. And I don't see too many improvements, actually.
I don't see that feeling that they will be that better to win the EuroLeague. It seems like they're not hungry enough. They're not happy as they were before together. And as I said, if Ataman is getting crazy, it's not good for the team.
Yeah, like training on Christmas.
Yeah, for example. So, I mean, I like your prediction. Although I can see them making the Final Four, because at the moment, I think that in the end, I see only two teams way better than Efes. It's Barcelona and Real Madrid. Other teams, they are struggling as well. And a lot of depends on if Efes will get a home court advantage. It's not that... It doesn't seem that it will be that difficult. Okay, they're 4 wins away of Olympiacos.
I'm not so sure about
5
the home
wins
court
away
advantage,
from
to be honest.
3 wins away from Zenit. So I don't know.
I'm not so sure about the home court advantage. And actually, if they would face Olympiacos and the Greeks will have the home court, I would go for Olympiacos right now. You see players also getting injured more often than last year in Anadolu Efes.
It also goes along with their age.
Yeah. So I think
that's a good prediction.
I think right now, if they would face in the playoffs Barca, Real Madrid, Olympiacos, I would go for these 3. And even if Anadolu Efes would go against Unix Kazan and Milan, and even CSKA, they could face CSKA.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't bet on Anadolu Efes. The only team I would see them beating right now from the top 8 in a series, I would say Zenit. So
probably you're right.
Just my prediction.
And Milan, you never know what kind of Milan
you
will
never
get in
know,
the playoffs.
of course. They also have some problems with injuries. But my prediction for this year is that Anadolu Efes will not be there in the Final Four.
That's pretty bold prediction. Also have a pretty bold prediction. I think that CSKA will win the EuroLeague. I was a fan of CSKA before the season, and I have a feeling that they will get it done. Now they are 7th, but they are only 2 wins away from the 3rd seed. So there are plenty of games to gain home court advantage for the playoffs. They had their full roster only since December 10th. A lot of time to get a momentum. We question if Shengelius and Milutinov, if Shengelia next to Milutinov is a good fit. But they were 16-7 last year, and they were in the 2nd place before Milutinov get injured. The Final Four, I think that they will make the Final Four for sure, and it's on the tournament of 2 games. The experience is there. They have a great coach. I believe the chemistry will be there as well. And if they will find a good point guard which fits the rest of the group well, they will be a complete team. So I like Barcelona, I like Real Madrid more at the moment, but that's just my brave prediction that CSKA will win it all.
I'm sticking with my preseason prediction that Real Madrid will win the EuroLeague. I'm going to stick with that because when everyone's healthy and they had a full roster, in my eyes, Real Madrid is the deepest team in Europe, and in terms of experience, who can match them with Pablo Lasso and these guys? So in a Final Four, if Real Madrid is there, I will go with Madrid. But your prediction is fair. I mean, it makes sense. I get it. I actually talked a lot before the season with my other colleagues from BasketNews, and at least a few of them were saying that CSKA is going to win it all this year. So, yeah, it makes sense. Another one I have is actually about Monaco.
Oh, yeah.
I watched their last game of 2021, which was against Maccabi. It was not a very solid game in terms of quality for both teams, really, especially on defense, but you could have expected that. However, I saw Mike James playing really smart basketball, feeding Donatas Motiejunas and all the others, being the true floor general. I believe now for Sasha Obradovic, Mike James is averaging like 11 assists per game. So my prediction is that Monaco will be the team that's going to make a run in 2022. They will not make the playoffs, let's make it clear. But as you mentioned last year's example about Baskonia, I'm thinking Monaco is going to do something like this. Because, there's all these characters and egos and everything, but so far it seems that Sasha Obradovic is handling Mike James very well. And when Mike James is playing at this level, he makes other players better on the court. They're not going to be a defensive team, but they sure as hell have the instruments to win on offense. And I can see them. I mean, right now they are 7-11. So
which actually already takes them into the playoff race because they're just 2 wins away from the playoff 8th seed.
I think they're not going to be like on a 50% winning percentage, but they're going to be close. So I would say Monaco is a team to watch in 2022, and they could still make a run, and I believe in them for some strange reasons in my head.
Yeah, it's pretty strange prediction. I can see that happening. I can see Monaco making a late playoff push, but one of the concerns is how consistent Mike will be for the rest part of the season.
Yeah. So
that's always a question.
I'm gambling a lot here on Mike James being.
But it's Monaco; they're all about gambling. So
that's a nice one. But let's just make it clear. I'm not talking about them making the playoffs. I'm talking about, let's say, top 10. I could see them being in the top 10 or close to top 10. Yeah.
Who do you think that will drop out from the top 8?
As well,
top 8? 9th. Yeah.
Top 8?
Because we were talking about Fenerbahce, about Monaco and their playoff push, but...
No one. Right now, I've lost any belief that I had in Maccabi. Okay. I'm sorry to all the Maccabi fans. And Fenerbahce, without their star players, I said that I don't see them making the playoffs. So I think that no one's going to go down from the top 8 right now, the way it is. Zenit signed a new point guard, and Shabazz Napier at some point will come back, and they're still winning games with what they have. Unix, I don't think it was just a short run. They're good. Let's face it, they're good.
They're really good. They're probably one of the best top 3 team in the EuroLeague at the moment. But I have some strange bad feeling about them. I just don't see a lot of potential in their game. Our teams will improve. We cannot exclude COVID scenario. I just have a bad feeling. Although I would be very sad if they won't make the playoffs.
Unix?
Yeah. And Zenit actually, they're doing really good. Especially without playing without a point guard. Shabazz will return, but the question is when he will return, because Xavi was already...
But as I said, they signed this new player.
But Tyson Carter, I'm not so sure if he's already the EuroLeague player, because Olympiacos, they were also targeting him for the next season. He's coming from Lavrio, and it's tough to say if he's ready enough to lead his team. And they were already very lucky with having 12 victories, actually, in first 18 rounds. So I see them as a potential dropouts of the top 8, unfortunately. But anyway, I mean, there are not a lot of room left for any other team outside the top 8, so that will be difficult.
When you mentioned Tyson Carter, right? And you're not sure, coming from Lavrio, how's he going to be in the EuroLeague? I would say like 7 or 8 years ago, somebody was not so sure whether a guy coming from Colossus will be good enough for EuroLeague in the middle of the season. That guy was Mike James. So let's see. Let's just wait and see.
Of course, we have.
If Xavi wanted him, you can imagine that. You can imagine that he's a good basketball player. I don't think that teams are going to drop out of that. Well, let's go like team through team. First 3: Barca, Real Madrid, Olympiacos. This is Final Four material. You have CSKA now at 7th. This is also Final Four material. Milan, with all this experience and talent, I cannot imagine them not being in the top 8. Anadolu Efes, one way or another, they should be in the top 8. So you're only left with these questions about Zenit and Unix.
And a lot of takes, if you talk about Unix, a lot of takes luck factor, which you cannot rely on.
And then you're gonna look at the second part of the table. the standings and thinking who's going to go for their spots.
I don't see a lot of quality, actually.
Is it Bayern?
I like Bayern.
Zvezda?
Though. No, Zvezda, they have no chance. Although they will be in the playoff race, let's say. But I don't see them in
Maccabi, Fener, as well. Let's agree on this one that as well is not going to be number 9.
I think Bayern can be way better in the second part of the season. They struggled a lot in the beginning because of reasonable reasons. Yeah. And as you mentioned, maybe Monaco will turn into some kind of Cinderella.
Baskonia with Wade Baldwin playing like he plays right now. They trashed Barcelona. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we got a little bit off topic. I was talking about Monaco and my prediction. So what's your other prediction for this year?
I had a bit different predictions. This one is more about off the court stuff, and it is I just think that Jordi Bertomeu is not going anywhere. I think that he will stay in the EuroLeague. And
sorry, man, I just imagined that scene from the King of Wall Street. Is it the movie?
Okay.
The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
I'm not leaving.
He was about to announce that he's leaving, but he's not leaving.
I'm not leaving.
At least for one more year, he will be doing this, because currently there are rumors about Spanish teams threatening leaving the EuroLeague if Jordi is out. And he might stay, if not in CAO position, but he will continue in some important role. And I just hear all these rumors from very different corners of our basketball community, starting from the FIBA Champions League, in the EuroLeague, other teams close to the tournament, because it's just Jordi. He created the EuroLeague. It's not going to be easy. He's a lawyer. He's a good lawyer. He put all the things to keep his position safe. And as I said, the Spanish teams strongly support him. So it's not going to be easy. And I've heard that all these opposition teams who were already trying to decide who will be the next CAO, they're not so active in these talks. So I have nothing against Jordi. My only wish that EuroLeague would improve. They would go forward. With Jordi or not, for me, there's no difference. So that's my only wish, that if Jordi is staying, if he's doing this and he's not going anywhere, at least he has a plan how to improve the tournament, starting from the different format, helping the teams to make the EuroLeague product more profitable.
But let's not forget that EuroLeague is like an institution that consists of these A-licensed clubs, and they actually vote on everything.
That's a very important point.
Yeah, so
of course.
If there are disagreements,
but there are already some disagreements. You can remember the voting for Jordi's dismissal, and if I remember well, it was 6-5, very, very close vote. And some teams were changing their vote in the last minute because they didn't see the clear alternative plan. Okay, Jordi is out. What's next?
Yeah. Maybe Jordi Bertomeu is not the best leader, but at least he made EuroLeague stable. And you always have to be careful what you wish for, because there's only one letter between Bertomeu and Bartomeu. Get it? Okay, right. I really don't have anything to add about this one, because I don't have any inside info or stuff. But and I'm not really that interested in what happens in the offices, to be honest. My another prediction is again related to the standings, and my prediction for this year is that Barcelona will not be the winners of the regular season.
Okay.
They will not be the top seed.
Because Real?
Because Real Madrid, because Barcelona, I think they were winning too many games with all the problems that they had. And right now, when I saw them lose against Baskonia, it made sense that they finally lost and had a bad game.
Even the game against Unix, they should have lost that game, actually. Yeah. The quality is decreasing, and it's reasonable because they have really bad injury problems. And it will take some time for all these players to get back.
And for Madrid, they had their COVID cases. The players are getting back. Madrid have the squad to play double or even triple game weeks. It's not a problem for Pablo Lasso to have more double game weeks in the second part of the season. It's not a problem for Real Madrid when everyone's healthy to play a couple of games in 48 hours. They have the players to do that. Barcelona, right now, let's say Corey Higgins came back after his injury, but he just didn't look himself. He will need some time. Nikolaitis, when he gets back, he will need some more time. They were riding on Jokubaitis and Laprovitola's backs, and they were amazing, but how long can it last? And Nikola Mirotic, of course, he's the number one player in the EuroLeague, but for me, Real Madrid, with their depth, with the roster and their system, they're winning this battle. I think they're going to be number one seed in the Spanish ACB League and in the EuroLeague. Barcelona, I would see them in number 2.
You know where's the problem? That's if you win the regular season, nothing changed.
No, of course. I'm not saying that.
If we had playoff series, finals of 5 games, best of 5, it would matter a lot.
So in the Spanish League, it matters.
Yes,
because you get the home court advantage for the finals.
I can clearly see Sharas resting his main players in the end of the regular season. Pablo Lasso will do it as well, but he just have a longer bench, deeper roster to win all these games with his second or third lineup. So, yeah, that's an issue for the EuroLeague basketball and another idea for improving the format.
It's a great point because let's remember our previous EuroLeague champions. Like when Fenerbahce won with Željko, they were 5th in the regular season. When Real Madrid last won with Pablo Lasso and Luka Doncic, they were 5th. In both scenarios, they were facing Panathinaikos Athens without a home court advantage. They won. They went to the Final Four. They won the title. Number 1 seed really does not give you much. Actually, there's not much difference between 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as you have home court for the quarterfinals and you cannot choose the opponent, you never know what you're going to get. We saw last year Barca were number 1, but they had the most difficult series against Zenit. So yeah, it's not a big deal. I agree on that one. I'm just saying that Real Madrid have the ability to cruise past the regular season.
And to be the best team of the regular season.
Yeah,
let's call
it that's my point. Because Barca, it's amazing. They finished the first part of the season with 15 wins and only 2 losses. Setting a record, I believe.
They already overachieved
in this
actually.
format. But I think they're going to drop a little bit, and Real Madrid is there. Almost the same result they have, actually, 14-3. And the El Clasico is going to be in Madrid in the second part of the regular season. So they're going to go for their revenge when they lost in Palau. It's just my prediction. I'm not saying it changes the big picture. It's just a simple prediction.
Wow, the potential possibility to have a final series, best of 5, and Real playing against Barca in the EuroLeague finals. Wow. That would be an amazing event. And okay, I understand the idea that a lot of people from different countries come to the Final Four, but you really think that some foreign fans wouldn't come to Barca or Real to enjoy their weekend, to enjoy their time off, and to watch the best quality basketball in Europe?
I was always saying that I'm in favor of playoff series instead of the Final Four. I don't like the Final Four format, but I also understand that maybe it's a product that is easier to sell. Final Four, this weekend of EuroLeague basketball, it's easier to sell to foreign markets, maybe. I don't know. But also, quite nostalgically, I remember the Bologna Tau Ceramica series, right? Wow, good times. I was a little kid, almost a teenager. I was already in love with basketball, and to me, that series was something really special. I would like to see that right now in the modern EuroLeague, but we heard a lot of times from Jordi Bertomeu that he's not actually considering it.
Maybe with another guy on the top, we would see some changes over there. My last prediction, it's also a pretty safe one, but I just predict that we will have some massive summer moves in the free agency. You already mentioned some of them. I can clearly see Shane Larkin leaving Efes. I would love to see him in Fenerbahce, actually. That would be a hell of a game changer in Turkish markets. I can see especially if Efes will disappoint, I can see Vasilij Mitic finally going to the NBA. Will Clyburn is on an expiring contract. I wonder what Fenerbahce will do with Jan Veselir and Nando De Colo. Mario Hezonja, Unix, always a big drama in summer. Barcelona is pretty safe with Mirotic, Calates, Higgins on a long-term contracts, but Brandon Davis is on an expiring contract. A lot of changes in Milan, starting from Delaney, Rodriguez, Kyle Hines, other veterans out of contracts. CSKA will have to find somebody instead of Will Clyburn, or they will continue with him. And for sure, they will have to find another start for the backcourt. And especially Hackett is turning 35 this year, and he's on an expiring contract as well. So a lot of interesting changes might come this summer, which also might change the picture of the EuroLeague, which I actually like. We need some change, I think. I would love to see more changes, actually. But I saw, Maccabi, they extended Wilbekin for 3 years. I actually thought that would be a good question. What would Barca do with Nick Kalaitis if his contract was expiring this summer, for example? Kubaitis, of course, he's not ready yet to change him at a full speed, but for the next summer, the summer 2023, maybe.
I would extend Nick, but Barcelona, they're doing these...
But as a backup, probably, no?
Barca are doing these, economical signings at the moment. The last preseason, they signed guys like Hayes, like Laprovitola. They were signing role players for a lot less money. And if the financial situation is difficult, of course, it's unreasonable for you to re-sign star players on big contracts. I don't think that Nicolaitis is irreplaceable. But if it is possible, I would really keep him. Yes, Laprovitola and Jokubaitis, they're showing some good stuff, but still, playoffs, Final Four, the finals in the ACB League against Real Madrid, big players are needed in these games, and Nicolaitis is one of the biggest players in Europe, so I would keep him if possible. That's a really interesting point, actually, that the off-season market could be interesting to follow. This summer in 2022. My last question for you about 2022 would be about these Euro Cup teams that are knocking on the EuroLeague doors. Partizan Belgrade. Will they be in EuroLeague in 2022?
I hope so, but the way they play at the moment, I'm not a fan. Of course, when Željko is on the board, you just have to trust the process. It's Turley. It's a completely new team, completely new project, and they will for sure will be better when the playoffs will come. But it's not going to be as easy as everybody thought. As I said, there are concerns over the game. There are concerns over the format of the Euro Cup, and a lot of unpredictable things can happen. I just hope that we will have 2 Euro Cup teams.
So Virtus Bologna?
I would love to have Virtus Bologna and Partizan in the EuroLeague next year. But as I said...
This year,
2020. Oh, yeah, it's already
predictions for 2022, right?
But there are many dangerous teams.
So,
Valencia,
so Unix Kazan, if they make the playoffs, they can take one of these spots?
Yeah.
So right now, if you're in charge of Virtus or Partizan, you're watching EuroLeague games and you're always cheering against Unix.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Crazy. Okay, right. So I think that's it.
That's it. This pod was shorter one because we will try to be a little bit shorter than before.
We can explain this a little bit quickly. Just like in Lithuania, we have the Lithuanian podcast. The Lithuanian audience really got used to listening for 2 hours.
They're crazy
to us talking about basketball.
Podcasts.
But then we did a little bit of research that actually English or American podcasts, they're always about 1 hour's length, and 2 hours is just too much. So we're gonna try to be a little less talkative.
Yeah, but it was short, but it was good. And the next week we're coming back with Q&A session.
Yeah.
We will ask you. Actually, you can put your comments below this video to make some questions.
But we'll also launch it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Everywhere where it's possible. BasketNews, your profile, my profile.
So follow Rytis Vyšniauskas on Twitter, follow Donatas Urbonas on Twitter, and of course follow our podcast on basketnews.com and Basket News YouTube channel. Thanks a lot, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you next time.